I do want to start off with a little bit of a state of the church address, if you will. I haven't done one of these in a while. There are some awesome things that are happening in our church, and you just witnessed one of them. I mean, we have our youth, youth group is getting off the ground and starting. We've been able to help several people with some financial things and help some other organizations. And we've been able to, people are giving their lives to Jesus and people are being baptized. We saw 4 people in the last 2 weeks that we showed you on video getting baptized. Lives are being changed and it's amazing. Yeah, you can clap. You're like, Zach, yeah, please clap, please clap. It's a good tactic. But I do want to say that that despite all of those great things, what we are seeing also, and what I have seen, is that it's kind of a two-sided coin a little bit. Because I know this happens in every church. You're not going to be exempt from this. But at the same time, all of these great things are happening in our church. There are so many things that people, that you guys are facing in life. And there is a lot, and it's happening at the same time. And for a long time, it kind of feels like, and not kind of feels like, it is. There are people who, you guys have faced death of loved ones, cancer, loved ones who have cancer and marital struggles and divorce and spiritual droughts and depression and illness is running through our homes, and there are financial burdens, and it's all happening seemingly at the same time. And it's like, it's great. There are great things that are happening, but on the flip side, it is heavy. It's hard. I'm like 2 minutes in and I'm already getting emotional. It's hard. It's hard for me, personally, because I know some of the struggles you go through. I know I walk through, and that is what this role is, to walk through life, through the difficult times and the good times. But I was reminded of, for myself, I'm reminded of Proverbs 25:20, which says, let's see if I can get it here. Singing cheerful songs to a person with a heavy heart is like taking someone's coat in cold weather or pouring vinegar in a wound. And I'm reminded of this because a lot of times when all of this is happening inside of our church, sometimes we just don't know the right thing to say, so we say nothing, right? Because we don't want to be doing that. But at the same time, we're kind of avoiding just wanting to talk about it, what's truly heavy on our hearts or on their hearts. And we're trying to be just cheer up. It's just try to think positively, it's all going to be okay. And you're thinking it's not going to be okay. It doesn't feel like it's going to be okay. It feels like there's not any end in sight potentially. And sometimes we're just trying to be silly or we're trying to be positive, and it's like we have ignored the pain that a lot of us are going through. It's like pouring salt in a wound or taking a coat in a snowstorm, and they don't have any song to sing right now. And they would much rather you sit and weep with them than sing to them. And sometimes we forget that. But today's message is a message of hope. But it is, honestly, it's like sitting together as a family of God and just resting in the promises of Jesus, no matter what we're facing. And it's a message of honesty. It's a message of reality, and that's the words of Jesus that have always been. He always comes with love, honesty, discipline, discipleship, love, hope. He gives all of those things, and we want the truth. We genuinely do. And as humanity, we want truth, and I believe that, but the problem becomes when you're not a believer, you start to define, how do we define truth and what I really want? But as believers, we know what truth is because we will one day be returned to our Creator because the image of God is impressed upon us. And so we do want the truth, but our feelings and our emotions, they want to be coddled and they want to be catered to, don't they? But as believers, our souls, we want the truth, even if it stings. But our feelings, they lie to us. And they sometimes just to protect us, it's a defense mechanism. But the problem is you don't heal by avoiding the truth. We heal by embracing the truth that Jesus has because he says the truth will set us free. And so we don't want to be in bondage to our feelings. We want to be in surrender to Jesus, especially as a church. And so just so you know that just about every single sermon that I preach, God will basically either have me face whatever I am about to preach on, or I'm going to walk through it with somebody else. And so by the time it gets to you at this part of this time, it has been prayed over, it has been poured over, and it has been wrestled through, and today is no different. And so I am somebody who wants to lead people. It doesn't matter who you are. I want to lead people in a way that creates disciples and not crowds. As we have been talking about a lot lately in Mark, like I don't have any interest in crowds. Like crowds are nice and they inflate your ego and they make you think that is success. But crowds come just to get something from Jesus. And disciples come to be with Jesus. And so I want to be somebody who leads us to get on the boat with Jesus and not to shout at him from the shoreline like a lot of them do and like a lot of people do today. They just say, I believe in Jesus and I understand him. I'm not getting in the boat with him. But I would rather lead us to a place to say, I want you to get on the boat, be a disciple of his, get in the boat and you're gonna go through a storm with him. He will be there with you. So today, if I'm honest with you, if I can be honest, not that I'm not honest, I don't know why that phrase, anyway, I am always honest with you. I'm going to be more transparent to be transparent with you. Today is a message that I don't think is a coincidence that we have just happened to come across this section of scripture as we've just been going through Mark, considering everything that it seems like all of us are going through together. And so today might not be as quite of a polished message as I probably would have liked, but I like what Haley said. She said, well, we're not very polished people, so it works. I don't know if that's an insult to you or a compliment, but I'm going to just speak from the heart today. I'm going to share with you in my notes what I have come across inside of this section of scripture and how it applies to us. And so all I'm asking is that there's always something that God has for you. And a lot of times we come to church to hope that I'm going to say, or whoever's going to say the thing that you're going through. And then we feel disappointed because it wasn't the thing that we thought that we wanted. But there's always something for us, and God has something for us, even the smallest nugget, if we lean in and we just say, what do you have for me today, God? What do you have for us today? And you'll be surprised how he speaks to you about something you didn't know was residing in your heart. And it wasn't necessarily what you're going through, but it was in your heart. So can we do that together today? All right, I'll take that. But I want to start by praying before we get started. So Jesus, thank you so much for your word. Jesus, we want to be disciples of you. We don't want to be your crowd. We want to be your disciples. So I just ask that you prepare our hearts as we get into your word, as we start to learn. I pray that you remove any distractions from this room. I pray that you are lifted up in our hearts, that we are leaning in and that you are speaking. So prepare our hearts now as we come before you, and we give you praise because you're worthy of it. I pray this in Jesus' name, amen. So if you have been here, maybe I think it's 3 or 4 weeks now ago, it was in Mark chapter 3, we talked about a concept called the Markan sandwich. And this is an actual scholarly term. The sandwich is something I put in there. That is not scholarly. But a Markan sandwich, if you don't know what a Markan sandwich, this is what happens in the book of Mark when Mark will start something. He'll start a certain type of story, and then he will shift immediately in the middle of it. And then he will come back later and complete the sandwich by completing the buns, I guess. Anyway, so we're about ready to come up on a big Markan sandwich as we start our text today, which is in Mark chapter 5, beginning of the bread. And it says, Jesus got into the boat again and went back to the other side of the lake, where a large crowd gathered around him on the shore. Then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleading fervently with him. My little daughter is dying, he said. Please come and lay your hands on her, heal her so she can live. Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. So what we see in this first section, I think what we can see is something to learn is if we want Jesus to act, we must first have a posture of surrender. Because, so if you were here last week, we talked about Jesus casting out a legion of demons out of a guy. And so now he has come back. Word has spread so quickly that he has come back. He was on the other side of the lake. Well, now he has come back to the other side of the lake. And that has already gone around, and everybody by word of mouth has already heard that Jesus is coming, and the crowds are ready for him upon arrival. This is how quickly it spread. And so Jairus, this leader of the synagogue, it was a big deal. This is a big deal that he has come to Jesus, because he was essentially appointed like he is a key figure in the Pharisees in their revolt against, or call it like this uprising that's starting to happen against Jesus. And so this local synagogue leader was a powerful presence inside of the land, inside of all of the people. This is a big deal that essentially somebody who is in opposition, the Pharisees, to Jesus is now coming before him and bowing low. This is a big deal. But you see, like part of our faith we can learn inside of this from Jairus is that when he came to Jesus, when we come to Jesus, our faith has to be put to the test publicly. Meaning like we need to test our faith and to be able to withstand the weight of judgment that comes from people. Like both good or bad. But you know the first time that you're like, I'm a Christian, and then you feel all the eyes that are on you and you just wonder how are people receive me? And then, this moment that you have, we all need it. And here is Jairus, a big, powerful person inside coming to, and not just saying, hello, Jesus, I'm coming to interact with you. He's bowing low to him in reverence, and the weight of the crowds coming. Isn't this Jairus? This is a big deal, and we need to put our faith to the test by letting others see it and being able to hold the weight of that faith that is pressed upon us. But as you know, a lot of people are like, I'm a Christian, I go to church, I believe in Jesus. We have endured that weight, but we have to come to a direct meeting with Jesus, and we have to grow deeper. We can't just simply say that we believe publicly and then the weight hits and we recede because, that was too much. I'm a closet Christian now. Or we say publicly that we have faith and then we take the glory for ourselves. Or we never grow deep in our faith. But here's the even bigger thing about what we learned from Jairus in his posture of surrender that he comes. If you think about it, when we have needs, true needs in life, we push away the things that don't matter, right? Like when he's like, my daughter is about to die. And now suddenly it's like when something happens in our lives, what do? We say, we push aside, I don't care about the job right now. Mom, dad, my child, they're sick. I don't care about the job. I don't care about making money. We don't have time for recitals right now. We don't have time for your practices. It doesn't matter right now. We get very, very panicked, right? Because we're like, no, here is the absolute need. Nothing else matters. And Jairus is coming in that same posture. I don't care. I don't care if the Pharisees see me. I don't care what the crowd's looking at me. I don't care if they watch me bowing low. I need Jesus to act, and I will surrender. But something we have to ask ourselves inside of this is, are we giving our time to things that don't matter and avoiding the true needs that we have? Because it shouldn't take a major catastrophe, a panicked moment to suddenly realize, I think I need Jesus. It shouldn't take that to strip all that away, because we give our time to a lot of things that don't matter. And we think that they do, but they are nice comforts, but they will go away once life truly hits, and you know that, and you have experienced that. And what is our posture? We come, we say, hey, Jesus, I got all these things, and I'd like you to also add this to it. Or do we come to him saying, I don't care. I don't care. I bow low and I don't care. I just need Jesus. Because desperation drives us to Jesus. And desperation is good even if it's difficult. Because desperation causes us to stop depending on ourselves and we cling to Jesus. And that's what Jairus was at right now. I don't care. And we should cry out to Jesus. We should be pleading with him. We should go to him, and he may begin to get up like he did for Jairus and to begin to start to answer the prayer. And we should come to him with that. But we should not come to him in a posture of prayers of give me, rescue me, or prayers like that of a crowd, which are selfish. They are temporary. They are, let me heal so I can get back to my life. He answers prayers that are surrendered to him, no matter who you are, no matter what status you are, no matter how powerful you are or how lowly you are. And that's what desperation does for us. And that's when he gets up to start answering the prayers. Because remember, Jesus pulled the disciples to the side. He told everybody, he told the crowds, here's a parable of the sower. And they say, we don't get it. And he pulls the disciples in and says, I'm gonna explain the secret to the kingdom of God to you, not to them. He does not tell crowds the secret, the wisdom that we so want, the wisdom, please, Lord, just, I promise I'll be a good person. No, he comes and we come to him and he sees our hearts coming to him saying that we want something. And he knows that we have no intention of following him. All we want is something from him. We come to him, Jesus, save me. I want something now. I know I've been a good person. Isn't that good enough? I just want you to fix my life. But remember, if you were here a few weeks ago when we talked about crowds in his church, we talked about that we often want Jesus to relieve us of the hell we feel in our bodies, but we have no plans to remove the hell that's in our hearts once he does. And often Jesus sees us coming and he just backs away from us and he gets on to the boat. Because Jesus comes and he says, I know your heart before you even get to me. I know you have no intention of following me. All you want is this temporary relief. And these are the type of prayers Jesus doesn't get up to start answering. He wants a heart of true surrender. So let's carry on in our story. In verse 25, it says, a woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years, she had spent everything she had to pay them, but she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. She had heard about Jesus, so she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Immediately the bleeding stopped, and she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him, so he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? His disciples said to him, look at this crowd pressing around you. How can you ask who touched me? But he kept on looking around to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell to her knees in front of him and told him what she had done. And he said to her, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over. So we can learn inside of this section and be, we just want relief, but Jesus will want to know us. Because this woman was ceremonially unclean, according to Leviticus 15. And the side note, a lot of people see this like, oh, this bleeding that she has. And everybody thinks, well, this is probably a menstrual cycle. Not trying to be gross, but people think, oh, I've heard that before. Oh, that's what it is. That seems very terrible, but this was not that. This type of bleeding was something probably similar to that, but her bleeding was abnormal and very serious. And if the fact of being unclean, if anybody touched her, if they sat in a chair that she sat in, if they lied in her bed, they were considered unclean. They had to bathe and they had to go home and clean their garments off just because they touched her. And everybody in this village knew her. So everybody knew about this condition. She was an outcast because everybody's like, don't touch me. I don't want to have to go home and shower and I got to wash my clothes. Get away from me. And think about it, Jesus has just come from the other side of the lake to heal somebody else who had been outcasted with demons. And now here he is coming for a different outcast among the people. And we don't know if she was married, probably not. She may have actually been divorced because that was very frequent back then for men. They could pick whenever they wanted to divorce. She was bleeding. She was not only unclean, but she couldn't have kids. So he probably may have divorced her. She was poor, or she had money troubles at least. But now if you think about it, she is coming through the crowd. Everybody knows who she is, but she knows there's this guy that she's heard of that he has done all these amazing things. And she sneaks up behind him, not from the front. She thinks, I'll just touch him and I'll get out of here. And she touches him, and you have to start thinking once she realizes she's better, she starts to think, did I just give him my disease? What did I do to this man? Like, I know I'm different. I know there's something, but she doesn't know what she has done to him for all she knew. Because now she started to come to Jesus with doubts, but she still believed, but you start to have these doubts. And she was afraid, yet she was empowered by her despair. And that is what is good about desperation. It empowers us to act and to move. Because she had to have touched so many people to come through that crowd. And she knows it. And you think about it, she's just trying to please. Like the crowds are all around Jesus to the point where he said, who touched me? And they're like, bro, everybody's touching you. Like, how can you know? And she didn't touch his arm. She didn't touch skin. She touched the hem of his robe. And he knew. So that means by the time that she's getting through to him, you have to think that she might have been crawling or crouching because she doesn't want people to see her. And she's just touched how many people? And maybe they look down and go, you gotta be kidding me. What is she doing out? I mean, all of the ramifications inside of that. She came to Jesus with just this complete desperation and reckless abandon inside of hopeful surrender. And Jesus says, who touched me? And Jesus does not let her slip away. And he gives her attention. Like so much so that he stop everybody who touched me. And you see, some people are the same way. We do this too. We want to slip in. We want to hear a nice message. We want to just hear about Jesus. We want to get some sort of self-help improvement for our lives. We want the Bible to talk about what we're going through. We want to get the steps to be able to improve ourselves. Say, great, thanks, Jesus. I'm going to slip out now that my life's good. If you can just tell me how to get rid of it, like, I'm going to get out. But if we are truly seeking Jesus for our needs, he will stop and he will call attention to us, not to embarrass us, but he's giving us individual care. He comes and he says, who touched me? He says, what's your name? And if you've seen this before, a brand new believer comes in and they're like, man, I just felt something. It's different. And it's like somebody said, welcome, my child. And it's like, ooh, okay, that was weird. Did anybody else hear that? Like, it starts to kind of freak us out because he forces us in that moment, the same way that he did for this woman. He forces us to recognize who healed us and who saved us. And then suddenly the weight of that, of our shame, and we start to go, I feel disgusting and free at the same time. Does everybody know this? Does everybody see this? Is everybody judging me? Like, I feel different. And that's what happened when we feel the weight of our debt. It's what causes people to run from Jesus right when they meet him. The weight of this is too much. I was just trying to get a little bit better. And now suddenly this is too much. It's too heavy. The attention is too much. And it feels like the whole world is watching us. This feels incredibly awkward, but this just shows how much Jesus cares about us that he says, stop. I know you want relief, but I want to know who you are. And so we come to Jesus, or we want to come to Jesus, and we think, well, I don't know. I have this really imperfect faith. Like I believe in you. I believe that you can heal me. I don't know much about you, but I don't think you know all the things I've done, and this is all too much. But you don't need to have a degree or a theological clarity or this expertise to access Jesus' transforming power. You simply need a faith that believes that he can transform you and then let him grow you and mold you from there, just like this woman. But we struggle with this, how like imperfect that type of faith is. But like with this woman, she held this belief that she had this imperfect faith, but she believed, but she didn't even know completely who he was yet. She just trusted that he could heal her because it had been 12 years of suffering. And so you can have an imperfect faith and still find yourself in the graces of Jesus. But expect him to want to know you. Expect him to ask a follow-up question. You want to come in from behind and take the blessing. And he turns around and he says, I want to know you. You came for my transforming power and you got it. Tell me your name. Because we just simply want to run away once we felt free. Got it, thank you. I'll come back when I need you. Because a lot of times we think that we have to have a perfect faith before we can come to him. And like Nicole said in the video, you think you have to have this perfect faith or this perfect mentality or she said this perfect, like her life had to be perfect before she could come to seek God, and it wasn't working. But Jesus calls us to draw to him in our current state, where we are at currently. And Christians for too long have made it seem like you have to look like us, like you have to talk like us, like you have to appear to be clean like us first before you can get near our God, before you can become a Christian. But ultimately, the truth is that we're just as broken as people who come to Jesus. We're just as broken as the lowly who are crawling to him, pleading for desperation. The truth is that is us still. He has just been refining us for longer. And truly, as us, as Searchlight's church, our heartbeat is, come experience it. You don't have to look like me. You don't have to talk like me. I want you to experience how he's changed me and he's changed you. And that's what we want here. And that is what we want, because you have people who are coming to Jesus and they're wanting healing, and they have been the equivalent of bleeding for 12 years. And he is just wanting to come and to heal you and experience it. Yet he's going to make you stop and talk to him. He's going to search your heart. It's going to terrify you. But he's going to desire to have you talk to him. And that's what scares most people and what have them drive him away. Just like the people he cured, the man with the demons. And they said, not stay, Jesus. You just healed us of this demonic activity. They said, get out. Get out. I don't know what you just did, but get out. We'll take the demons over you. And oftentimes that's what scares us. My life just feels like it's going to change. I just think I have to be perfect. I think I have to have it all in order. These Christians just think they're perfect, but yet truly we're just like, come experience the power of Christ. And I love what Alexander McLaren said. He said, where do we learn that faith must be complete to be genuine? Our own weak hearts say it to us often enough. And our lingering unbelief is only too ready to hiss into our ears the serpent's whisper. You are deceiving yourself. Look at your doubts, your coldness, your forgetfulness. You have no faith at all. To such morbid thoughts, which only sap the strength of the Spirit and come from beneath, not from above, we have a right to oppose the first great lesson of this story, the reality of an imperfect faith. And turning from the profitless contemplation of the feebleness of our grasp of Christ's robe to look on him, the fountain of all spiritual energy, let us cleave the more confidently to him for every discovery of our own weakness and cry to him for help against ourselves. Because that is truly what it is. We want to come up behind Jesus. We want to grab the hem of his robe, but all of these doubts inside of us, it's us. We are our worst enemy. He won't accept us. They won't accept us. And yet we are reaching for the hem of his robe, and it is just us inside of our weakness. And he says, come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest. All right, so we're going to close this sandwich now. So now, if you notice, we went like we started, we had Jairus, then suddenly we're interrupted by a woman, and we don't hear about Jairus anymore. Well, now Jairus is going to come back, and we're going to finish his story. It says this, while he was still speaking to her, messengers arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue. They told him, your daughter is dead. There's no use troubling the teacher now. But Jesus overheard them and said to Jairus, don't be afraid, just have faith. Then Jesus stopped the crowd and wouldn't let anyone go with him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw much commotion and weeping and wailing. He went inside and asked, why all this commotion and weeping? The child isn't dead, she's only asleep. The crowd laughed at him, but he made them all leave. And he took the girl's father and mother and his 3 disciples into the room where the girl was lying. Holding her hand, he said to her, Talitha koum, which means, little girl, get up. And the girl, who was 12 years old, immediately stood up and walked around. They were overwhelmed and totally amazed. Jesus gave them strict orders not to tell anyone what had happened, and then he told them to give her something to eat. So inside of this section, I think we can see, and moving forward, we can see this, is that faith isn't dependent on answered prayers, but rather we still have faith even if he doesn't answer them. Because if you think about it, think about the story. We just read about this woman. It's great. It's amazing. Like all that Jesus did for her. He healed her after all of that time. But what about Jairus during this time? He has come and said, please, my daughter is dying if you don't come. And then he stops Jesus stops to help this woman. All the while, what is the parent doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? My daughter, did you not hear me? My daughter is dying. Like, what are you doing? Why are you giving attention to her? She's nobody, is what he could have been thinking. But you see, Jesus was going to help Jairus. But he made Jairus wait, and in doing so, his daughter would die. But this would do two things. Not only did it show his great power and authority, it did two things. By making Jairus, the leader of the synagogue, a very powerful, well-known person, an important figure, wait in order to heal this woman who was bleeding, it showed that Jesus would not show favoritism because of social status or caste systems. Essentially, he gave this woman favor over a high-ranking official because her cares were just as deep as Jairus's. He stopped because he was also teaching. Yes, Jairus, I have to stop because he was showing the crowd not only does he heal the rich and the powerful, but he heals the lowly and the unclean and the forgotten. And see, Jesus sees everybody for who they are, not what they've accomplished, not how powerful they are. He doesn't see you for what family you were born into or for what religion you were born into. He offers salvation and grace and healing to everybody in his name, and he cares for the rich and the poor alike. And so Jairus, though, if you think about it, man, that poor man, he had to wait and suffer before he was going to see an answer to his prayer. Like the pain that he must have felt, like inside of him, this potentially this anger towards Jesus. Like if you're a parent and you're like, what are you doing? And the anger that you have towards Jesus, and I gotta be honest with you, I've had that anger. Like with our son, like, what are you doing? And many times I've sat and thought, what are you doing? Why are you waiting? Why are you healing them? And I imagine that, like, the thoughts that Jairus had as they're walking towards the house, please come, Jesus. You said you were going to help, and now you have stopped, and you're starting to think what's going to happen to my daughter and what's going to happen, and all he can hear is his own thoughts. You can only hear the crunching of the road under his shoes, like the crowds murmuring behind him as they're following, like, and this anger that wells up in him that has to be like, why are you stopping? Like you said you would help, and like, now what are you doing? Because sometimes Jesus tells us no, and sometimes he tells us not yet. And sometimes he may answer our prayers, but it's not gonna be right now. It's gonna be in his timing. It's not gonna be in my own or your own, and there's gonna be pain involved before the answer comes. And then to pour more salt in the wound, it's like the people come up and they're like, hey, your daughter's dead. Don't even bother him anymore, okay? Like that reminds me of the Proverbs 25:20 passage. Like, just give me your coat. It's freezing out. Hey, let me just pour some salt in your wounds. And sometimes these are the moments where just don't even bother Jesus with your problems. Just go away. And when Jesus gets there and he gets to this home and you see this commotion, you have to understand that there are people that were just crying and they're weeping and they're wailing. And then when Jesus says, why are you worried about it? She's not dead, she's asleep. And notice how they started laughing at him like that. Well, back then in that culture, there were people that were hired mourners that would come. The culture was about wailing and weeping, and we're more about being reserved, right, in our culture when we mourn. So these people were hired to come and wail and make a big show of it. So you'll understand when Jesus says, she's not dead, she's sleeping, and they can go from crying to suddenly just laughing. And there is an anger that comes inside of Jesus. Because in Matthew, he tells us a story. He says when that happens, he says, get out. And he kicks them all out. And so Jesus comes to him and he comes to these people and he's upset and he's angry. He doesn't let all the disciples in. He only lets 3 of them in. Now, there's a kind of another verse in John chapter 11 when Lazarus has died and Jesus comes and he sees Mary and Martha, and Mary is crying, and it says that he saw Mary crying. He saw all of the pain and the hurt, but he saw other people mourning with her. Most likely these were hired mourners, and he sees that she is cut to the heart, and these mourners are just here for show. And it says Jesus got incredibly angry. And this is where we come across the verse, Jesus wept. Because he came here thinking, look at Mary and her pain, and look at these people who don't really care about what she's truly going through. This angers me because my child is hurting. And that is what he comes to this house, and he sees that this family is hurting, and he says, she's not dead. She's only asleep. That should offer hope. And they start laughing. He says, get out. You don't understand what this family is going through. Get out. Meaning no miracles for you. No, get out. You will not even be allowed to see what I'm about to do. Get out. And to the woman, he said, daughter. Like such a personal thing. She's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so terrified. I'm so sorry for what I've done. But he says, daughter, your faith has healed you. He didn't chastise her inside of all of this. He says, daughter, your faith has healed you. Or son, he says to you, faith has healed you. And what we can learn inside of the story of Lazarus and the story of this family is that Jesus is on the side of those who grieve. And that's really hard for us to just rest in that it shows that Jesus says, I know what you're going through. I am there right next to you. I don't go to these people who have this contempt in their heart. They're phonies. I am on the side of those who grieve because he knows what you're going through. Because we have to remember that faith trusts in the midst of hopelessness. Because see, Jesus exorcised demons that nobody could cast out. He healed a woman nobody could cure. He brought a girl back to life when there was no hope for her. Because Jesus responds to those in faith, not with those in skepticism or mockery or contempt. And he's not afraid of the wild men who are possessed by demons. He's not afraid of the crippled or the intense storms. He's not afraid of your hurts. He's not afraid of your doubts. He's not afraid of your anger or your confusion or our pain, which may cause us to lash out inside of those in questions and doubts. He noticed he did not rebuke the people when they had these emotions. He gave them soft, calm phrases and truths. If you remember, he said, give me your hand. He said, your sins are forgiven. He said, why are you afraid? He said, your faith has healed you. Don't be afraid. Just believe. But the true hard part about this message that I sort of it's the reality of this is we read this and it is amazing. It's amazing to see what Jesus has done for this people, for Jairus and as a parent, and for this woman who is just seeking healing. But the truth of it is not every touch of Jesus heals. Not every prayer is answered. And things that are unexplained will still happen, unfortunately. And I don't have all the answers to life, and I wish that I did, but I don't. And I can't tell you how many times I have sat across a table from somebody who is suffering. I've been on the phone with somebody on the other line, or I've just been on the other side of a text, and they are suffering and they're grieving and they're just facing just these circumstances that I have no answer to. And I wish I tell them, I'm sorry. I wish I had the magic words. I wish I was just this godly thing that I could just tell you that's gonna make it all go away. But I don't. I don't know what he's doing. But I can cry with you. And I can be there and walk through this with you. I can tell you, you won't be alone when you walk through this. Because you see, the Gerasenes back when Jesus would cast out the demons, they begged Jesus to leave. And then Jesus is now being begged to come to Jairus' house. He's being intercepted by a woman who's begging to be healed by just a touch, because humanity is begging Jesus to heal and begging him to leave. He's the most polarizing figure in history, and he will be forever. And the thing is we don't know about all the factors that are in play, that what God is doing, but we can see inside of these stories that it affirms that God is on the side of those who suffer and who are stricken by grief. And a miracle doesn't occur in every situation, but it doesn't lessen God's power to save. And think about it, if God intervened in every situation, we wouldn't even exercise faith. We can see the true form of faith that we probably don't see inside of suffering, but we think it inside of suffering, but it's a form of faith that we can see that's in action, that is probably the pinnacle of what faith truly is. And it is in the Old Testament. It is with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Because they come and they were being told by King Nebuchadnezzar, bow to this gold statue that I have created. And they're now standing while everybody is bowing to this foreign god, to this false god. And this is what it says in Daniel 3. It says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God whom we serve is able to save us. He will rescue us from your power, your majesty. But even if he doesn't, we want to make it clear to you, your majesty, that we will never serve your gods or worship the gold statue that you have set up. You see, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, just like Jairus and just like the woman, they were out of options. And that's a lot of times what I feel like a lot of you are at. You are out of options. And I don't have the answers for it. And I wish that I did. Like these people, they had nowhere to go but to God. They have nowhere to go but to Jesus. And that might be where you are at. You have nowhere to go. You're seemingly out of options and Jesus is all you've got. But faith is also something that can be seen. Like them standing in front of everybody, not bowing to worship to a gold statue. We can see it in the men who were digging through the roof to get their friend to Jesus. We see them coming to Jesus in complete surrender because faith kneels before Jesus. Faith begs Jesus. Faith works their way through the crowd and overcomes their shame to get to Jesus for just a touch. Because faith touches and faith moves us to action. But the truth of it is, we should have a faith like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Because yes, we know that our God can save. We know that he can heal. We know that he can restore. And we believe that because faith opens the door to the power of God. And we know that he can answer our prayers. But we should have a faith like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which said, even if he doesn't, we will still serve the Lord. And that is the hardest type of faith. Yes, I know that he can. Yes, I have made my way through the crowd. I have reached for the hem of his robe. And I am pleading for those that I love. And I know that he can do it. But the true test becomes, even if he doesn't heal my loved one, even if he doesn't heal me, even if he doesn't restore my marriage, even if he doesn't save my friendships, even if he doesn't allow me to get married, even if he doesn't allow me to have children, even if he doesn't save me from poverty, if he doesn't save me from prison, if he doesn't save me from persecution, and even if he doesn't save me from my trials, because Jesus dying on the cross and conquering death and dying for my sins and rising from the dead, one day I get to be with him because of that, so that even if he doesn't answer my prayers, I will still serve the Lord. Even if he doesn't, still, I will trust him. And that is easy for me to shout at you, but it is incredibly difficult to live out. It is incredibly difficult to lead. But I remember that there are people who, when they are going through struggles, there is a psalm that I tell people to read because I believe like it is the true condition of the heart, of the human heart, and our condition and how we feel inside of all of that. And it is Psalm 77. We're going to read it. Notice there's going to be a shift here. It says, I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord. At night, I stretched out untiring hands, and I would not be comforted. I remembered you, God, and I groaned. I meditated, and my spirit grew faint. You kept my eyes from closing. I was too troubled to speak. I thought about the former days, the years of long ago. I remembered my songs in the night. My heart meditated and my spirit asked, will the Lord reject forever? Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in anger withheld his compassion? Notice the shift. Then I thought, to this I will appeal. The years when the Most High stretched out his right hand. I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will consider all your works and meditate on all your mighty deeds. Your ways, God, are holy. What God is as great as our God? You are the God who performs miracles. You display your power among the peoples. So this is a shift. I don't know how many of you have equivalent of had these untiring hands at night outstretched to the Lord, please begging him, and you were not comforted. I have. How many of us have been bowed before the Lord? We have been on our face and knees. We have cried tears and puddles in places where people walk and they don't know those tears have been there and not been comforted. And so I see this and you think, man, is he not gonna do anything? Like you might be sitting there thinking, have I lost your favor? Are you never going to ask or never gonna answer again? You're never gonna bless me again? But we have to remember in this shift, to remember everything he has done for you. We have to appeal to ourselves, to don't forget how he has changed your heart. I cannot forget in my own strife, in my own grieving, that he is on my side and he is in your side, in your hurt, and we cannot forget that. We have to appeal to ourselves to not forget the blessings that he has already given you, to don't forget to praise him for what you do have instead of what you don't have. Remember, he is good even if your circumstances are not. And don't forget, do not stop talking to him. Do not cut off communication with him. If you look in scripture with the people who've fallen away, the people who had walked away and walked right into sin, they had carried this great burden and they stopped praying. Yet there are people like David who are just groaning. I don't even know how to I'm lifting my hands and I have no comfort. And yet he says, no, I have to continue to talk to the Lord. And they were brought out of it. So don't stop reaching for the hem of his robe. Don't stop pursuing him even if he says no. Maybe he's saying not yet. He may be saying no, he may be saying not right now, he may be saying not in my timing, or he may be saying not ever. But sometimes we feel like I don't have the words to be able to give. I don't even know, Lord, what I'm even asking, or I'm so tired of asking the same thing over and over again. Do I have to say it again? And I'm reminded of Romans 8:25, which says, but if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it with patience. Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know what to pray for as we ought, but the Spirit himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. And so the Spirit intercedes when you don't know what to pray. Just give your heart to him and say, you know. Because faith is not about walking away because God has not given me what I desire, or that he doesn't care. I know that he is walking with me to the house potentially, or I know that he is going to heal and I don't know how long it will be and you don't know how long it will be, and he may take people from you, he may take things from you, but he is on your side. And he said, and the reason why they laughed at him, because he says they're not asleep. She's asleep. She's not dead. She's asleep. And they laughed because he meant inside of this world, her body may have died, but she is resting until that final day when we will be resurrected. We will be with him. And that's why they laughed. And you'll see Peter, you'll see Paul, they start using this sleep language that says, yes, they may have died in this world, but they are asleep because we will be with him again. And Martin Luther lost his daughter of 14 and he cried out to her. He cried out to God because he lost her. And in that last time at her funeral, he cried out, he says, hammer away, she'll be risen again and I'll see her again one day. And this is the part, I wish you would save my child, but even if you don't. And this is the part that is so difficult, but we have to have this even if he doesn't type of faith. This even if he doesn't, I will remember all he's done for me. Even if he doesn't, I will still serve him. I will still worship. I will give thanks for what I have. I will not stop praying. I will serve others. I will stand on his promises. I will read his word. Even if he doesn't, I will wait. Even if he doesn't, I will forgive them. I will still obey. And even if he doesn't, I will trust him. And that is so hard. And I am living that out. Like I don't have that figured out. I am trying to have myself refined. I am sitting here going through messages where it's like, why, Lord, how am I supposed to get up and give this message when all these people are facing all of these trials and yet you reveal some of my own inside of me? This feels a little unfair. But also see that he realizes that he says, get up and I will speak for you. Because you are not alone as we walk through this.